Good afternoon, and welcome to this special Made by McGill Alumni webcast in partnership with the McGill World Restart Heart campaign, a global initiative to raise public awareness of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, in an effort to increase the number of people who could perform CPR when the need arises. My name is Derek Kassoff, Managing Director of Communications at McGill's Office of University Advancement, and it's Wednesday, October 13th. Cardiac arrest is one of the leading causes of death, with more than 35,000 Canadians dying of sudden cardiac arrest each year. Many of these deaths occur in homes and public places, often in front of family members, friends, or coworkers. It is with this human toll in mind that students, staff, and faculty at high schools, universities, and hospitals around the world gather together every October to impress upon the rest of us the need to learn CPR and other basic medical functions. The group at McGill is one of the largest in Canada and includes 50 students, staff, faculty, volunteers, and ambassadors. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by 3 members of the McGill team to talk about the important work they are doing on campus and among the general public. Let me introduce them. Joining me is Dr. Matthew Hanoush, let me get through this title properly, Assistant Professor of Medicine at McGill, Director of the Neurocritical Care Division at the Montreal Neurological Institute, or MNI, and General Internal and Critical Care Physician at the MUHC, where he is also head of the Organ and Tissue Donation Program. Welcome, Dr. Hanoush. I don't know how you found the time to squeeze this in, but we really appreciate it.
Thanks,
also with us today are Jeremy Levitt, a medical student at McGill's Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences and chair of McGill's 2021 World Restart a Heart campaign.
Hi, bro.
And Samuel Lortie, a McGill master student in mechanical engineering and himself a survivor of cardiac arrest. But welcome to all 3 of you. Before we get started, a reminder that if you're watching live and have questions for any of our panelists, you can send them to us via email at aoc@mcgill.ca, and we'll do our best to address them to our guests. So Dr. Hanoush, maybe I'll put my first question to you to kick off the conversation. So I suppose that in these times we're living in, these times of COVID, when so much focus and attention is on viruses and infectious disease, it's easy to forget about the human toll of heart disease and heart attacks. Can you remind us of the scope and magnitude we are dealing with? How prevalent are heart attacks, and where do they rank among the many hazards we face to our health?
Thanks, Derek. I think it's a great question. The way that I see it is that a great example would be the World Health Organization in 2019, right before the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, put out the leading causes of mortality worldwide. And they went and they kind of stratified it by income of countries. And we noticed that in every single country across the world, if not at the top of the list, very close to the top of that list, was heart disease as a leading cause of deaths in all these countries in terms of mortality. And that went in low income to middle income and even high income countries like North America and Canada. So it is one of the major, if not the major cause of death worldwide. And it's increasing, actually, in a lot of these, as I suggested, middle and low income countries. So it's a problem internationally, and it's a significant problem back home. As you know, you stated that how many deaths we had even just in Canada alone. So then you look at by age group, right? It's not just by countries, right? We're talking internationally, yet local. If you look at how this affects different groups of adults to younger adults, even children. And if it's not, again, number 1 and number 2, it's still within the top 5, top 10 causes of death. So this affects all ages, all countries, all people. And it's one of the major killers. And so if there's anything that we can do on our end to kind of highlight that and maybe change that, then I'll sign up for that, that's for sure. And I think that with everything going on with the pandemic, it's normal that we switch our focus to everything that's affected this world in the past couple of years. But let's not forget that despite that, this is ongoing, and this is a real public health emergency and crisis. I think that's the way that I would put it.
Great. Well, I could not have framed this conversation any better than you just did, Dr. Hanoush. So I appreciate that update for us. And clearly, it's an issue that, like you said, a public health emergency that we need to be addressing. That's going to be with us, long after the COVID pandemic is behind us. So, and we'll obviously have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about some of the great work happening here. But I want to maybe turn to Samuel now. So I know that Dr. Hanoush has just painted the big picture around heart disease and cardiac arrest for us. And although you talked a bit about age groups, I guess one of the big misperceptions around heart attacks is that they mainly affect older people. Yet you, Samuel, Samuel, you learned otherwise when you were just 24 years old. Can you share your story with us? What happened to you the day you unexpectedly went into cardiac arrest, and how did random passersby save your life?
Sure. Well, thanks for your question. So as you said, I was just 24, so this was in March of 2020, and right when the pandemic was hitting us in Canada, actually. Uh, so on that morning, I went out for my usual run. Now this wasn't unusual for me. It was something I did pretty much every day. Um, it was routine for me. So I went out for my run, to clear my mind, the pandemic and everything. And towards the end of my run, I simply just collapsed without warning, and I went into sudden cardiac arrest. Now, two people who were actually, I assume, going to work on that morning, they were driving by and they saw me actually collapse, and they knew exactly what to do. They rushed towards me, and they called an ambulance. They called 911, and fortunately, there was an ambulance nearby, and the ambulance obviously had a defibrillator on board. And so the paramedics got there, and they were able to restore a normal heart rhythm using a defibrillator. And so and then I was rushed to the hospital and spent a few days in the ICU. I don't I don't remember any of that. This was the story I was told. I don't remember much of my time in the ICU either. I remember some of my time in the hospital, but not most of it. I forgot or simply don't remember. So, but this is something that happened to me regardless. So I think my story just goes to show how this can really happen to anyone. I was physically in excellent physical shape. I was a runner. I'd been running since I think age 14, so 10 years when I was 24. I ran competitively at some point. I entered race and things like that, races, and so this is really not something that you would expect someone to happen to someone like me. I don't think so anyways. I don't think any of my friends were expecting this, and none of my family members either. So I think my story goes to show that really sudden cardiac arrest doesn't discriminate. It really just affects everyone.
Wow. And did they manage to figure out afterwards what had happened to you? Was it something like just a freak accident, or was it congenital?
It's probably congenital. It's something that I have, and I have to learn to live with it. It didn't. I had no warning. It wasn't really something that was present before I turned 24, but then suddenly it's just something I had to learn to live with. They don't have a name for it. I've tested negative for all the known heart problems. So at this point, it's really just something that happened that I know I have, but there's no name really. So
Wow. Well, thank you for being so open and sharing your story with
my
us. And I
pleasure.
know throughout the campaign, and maybe this is a good opportunity actually to bring Jeremy Levitt in. Maybe you can tell us a bit about the World Restart a Heart campaign. What is it all about, and what are you trying to accomplish, here at McGill and as part of this global initiative?
Thanks, Derek. The goal of the World Restart a Heart campaign is part of a global initiative that really aims to empower individuals with the willingness to act and also inspire bystanders with the necessary skills to be able to resuscitate people like Samuel. I mean, the reality of the situation which Matt shared with us and which Samuel spoke to us so personally about is that cardiac arrest truly does remain a leading cause of death around the world. And the large majority of cases, they occur in homes and public places. In fact, we know that up to 55% are actually witnessed by family members, colleagues, or friends. But the saddest part is that the survival to hospital discharge rate is extremely low at less than 10%. So Samuel's story is actually a miracle. It's a medical miracle, and it's few and far in between. And the reality of that is extremely unfortunate because we shouldn't be in a world where you need to be have the good fortune of being at the right time and in the right place in order to be successfully resuscitated with a good neurological outcome. We should be in a world where everyone is empowered with the essential knowledge that really can be broken down into a few fundamental steps that we're going to share with you today in order to be able to help themselves and their loved ones in these kinds of situations. And the work that we're trying to do as part of the World Restart a Heart campaign here at McGill which is an incredible initiative that I've had the privilege of being involved in for over the past 3 years, is really to bring together a multidisciplinary group of students, healthcare professionals, and affiliated hospitals and professionals across the McGill University network in order to really be able to take this message, this global message, and this truly universal message, and bring it close to home, bring it to friends and family, so that we can hopefully make a difference in our community. And I truly believe that inspiring the willingness to act and enhancing the skills of individuals in responding to cardiac arrests is a crucial public health investment. And I think that it's probably one of the most impactful approaches that we can make upstream in order to reduce the morbidity and the mortality of cardiac arrests.
Mm-hmm. So can you talk a bit about some of the specific initiatives? I know this is sort of, I guess, World Restart a Heart campaign week, at least at McGill and in other institutions around the world. So what are some of the activities and initiatives that your group has planned in addition to, things like this webcast?
Right. So the International Liaison Committee on Resuscitation actually declared on October 16th the World Restart a Heart Day. And what we did here at McGill is, as part of the campaign that I'm chairing, we took this into a week-long campaign. So we transformed this from a day-long event to a week-long campaign because we have so much content and so many amazing supporters and subject matter experts here at McGill that we wanted to showcase along with all of our ambassadors, that we turned this into a week-long series of activities, both in person and online, thanks to the improving situation of the pandemic, in order to be able to really, once again, inspire the willingness to act and enhance the skills of individuals. And so some of the events that we're covering include 4 live events. We had our first live event yesterday, which was a talk about sports medicine and cardiac arrest, where we featured the medical director of the National Hockey League's Players Association and a physician at the MUHC, Dr. Scott Delaney, as well as members of our student committee and a physician from our steering committee, Dr. François de Champlain, who is a trauma team leader at the MUHC. We also had incredible ambassadors, over 10 high-profile ambassadors, including astronauts, Olympic athletes, social media influencers, politicians, all really rallying together to help further the cause and help sensitize the public to this important mission. We also had an in-person education booths that are taking place throughout the week, today at the Jewish General Hospital, tomorrow and Friday on campus at McGill University, at the WRAH gates and in the McIntyre Medical Building, where individuals can come by and come learn their CPR skills and enhance their CPR skills on feedback mannequins. And then we're also launching a very large social media campaign, which reached over 500,000 people last year. And we're hoping to amplify that this year on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter, which helps transmit the essential information for individuals of the public to learn how to engage in bystander resuscitation. And we've also been activating classrooms and amphitheaters on campus through a CPR education module that we built online digitally, but also by going to amphitheaters with over 600 students per amphitheater and actually taking the time, spending those few minutes with students and faculty to be able to teach them the chain of survival and the essential steps to bystander resuscitation.
Great. Well, thanks for that. It's a very comprehensive update on some of the activities I know you have planned. I know the other thing that your group is doing has been putting out some videos to reach beyond the McGill campus into the general public. And I believe there's actually one video we have with us right now that we'd like to show. It's a 60-second video, and I think it really does a great job of summarizing some of the issues and some of the awareness that you're trying to build. So maybe we'll just show that quick video right now.
In Canada alone, every 12 minutes, someone suffers from a cardiac arrest. If you don't do anything, they are going to die. In the next 60 seconds, we're going to teach you how to save a life.
If you see someone lying unconscious, the first thing you want to do is check if they're responsive. If they are not responsive and not breathing or breathing abnormally, they are likely suffering from a cardiac arrest.
Call 911. Let them know that someone suffered from a cardiac arrest. Send someone to find an AD if there's one nearby, and then start chest compressions.
For chest compressions, find the center of the chest, put your dominant hand down, interlock your fingers, and push hard and push fast.
Using an AED is really easy. You just apply the pads, turn on the machine, and follow the voice instruction. The machine will analyze the rhythm and tell you if a shock is recommended.
Great. Thank you. What a wonderful video. And I think, again, a great example of some of the great work you guys are doing. And I'll provide the website at the end, but I know you can get a list of all the activities and the videos at, I believe it's mcgill.ca/WRAH. So we'll post that information again at the end. Dr. Hanush, let me come back to you. I mean, it took me quite a while to get through your job title in the introduction. And I'm just wondering, given, I mean, all of your clinical and teaching responsibilities across the city, how do you find the extra time to volunteer on a campaign like this? And why is it so important to you as a practicing physician to make the time to do this?
That's a great question. I think that the time constraints and the responsibilities that we're all facing in healthcare are ever increasing, and we can find it difficult to find the time. That's true. This is not one of those things where I find it difficult, in the sense that it's very inspiring to work with people like Samuel and Jeremy, and especially the students at McGill that are doing like the bulk, if not all, of this incredible work that they've put together here over the course of this week. While it's a week in time, it's taken a year of their lives, if not longer, to prepare, and it's just a testament to all of them. But why I mention that is that that's what's fun about it. It's just so stimulating and so engaging, and so it gives you so much hope for the next generation to come and everything that we're working on together to achieve. And so going to these meetings and helping us, being part of the steering committee and working towards this week has been a fun and easy way for me to get away from all the things that are going on right now, sometimes in the hospital, and that I get to kind of participate with the group. So it's been a pleasure. And I hope that I can continue doing this. I've been here since the beginning, and I've only seen it not only improve every year, but it's quite literally exponential at this point. So the work they're doing is incredible. So to find the time, I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Now, what about you, Samuel? I obviously you've explained your personal story that we could, the connection to cardiac arrest is quite obvious for us to see. But I mean, you're someone who obviously you're studying engineering, so you don't have medical training. So what sort of perspective do you bring to these meetings and to the committee work that you're involved with?
Well, I think I wanted to get involved because I was hoping that my story, or people and especially people my age would relate to my story. I think one of the things I hear all the time is, "But you're so young. How could this happen to you?" And we talked about this earlier, but I think this is something I'm hoping to address here, and basically, yes, I want people my age to realize that this can happen, and I also want to try to help people understand that bystanders do actually have the power to do something and to help the person, and I think I'm living proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I was going to get into the notion of the bystander piece in a minute, but I was just, like I said, curious to get your sense of your perspective. And I do want to go back to Jeremy, because I know we spoke earlier off air, and you've got your own interesting story as well about how you got involved in medicine and cardiology more specifically. I think you want to actually be a practicing cardiologist when you grow up. So can you share with us a little bit of your connection? I mean, you were quite young when you decided that medicine was for you, right?
Sure, and we've had the pleasure of discussing this on several occasions. I think online as well, and it's a funny story actually. I was very young. I think I was almost 6 years old at the time in daycare when they asked us what our chosen profession was to be one day, and I was always told that I had a big heart, and so I was naturally attracted towards the heart, and I love to work with my hands because I was doing magic. So I also thought that I needed to be a surgeon, and that's when I drew a picture of a heart and a surgeon on a poster, and I think I still have a copy of that poster at home. And ever since I haven't deviated. So really my vision in terms of my passions and my interests in cardiovascular medicine and surgery, research and innovation as a surgeon scientist have truly persisted. And I think that in terms of my interest in cardiovascular medicine, there's really a breathtaking beauty to be able to touch the first organ system that develops, and it doesn't stop to beat to sustain life, really from the beginning until the end. And over the years, I kind of began to truly appreciate what it was I loved in cardiovascular medicine, that I was first naturally attracted towards, and now I'm able to better express myself. And I think that a lot of it has to do with really the prevalence of cardiovascular disease, right? I mean, this is something that almost affects every single person that we know at some stage in their life. And the reality, as Matt was sharing with us, is that we're in a pandemic right now, and these circumstances are unprecedented, but we know that vaccines are going to get us out of here. With cardiovascular disease and non-communicable diseases, unfortunately, we know that that's not the case, at least right now. There are no vaccines that are going to save us from cardiovascular disease, from cardiac arrests, and the effects of cardiac arrest are truly devastating. Their impact is tremendous, with over 35,000 cardiac arrests happening annually in Canada. I mean, that's one every 12 minutes. And so it's something to really wrap our head around, and it's something to realize that we're going to need to put in a lot more work than vaccines to be able to get us out of really this epidemic in cardiovascular disease. And so the amount of research and the amount of innovation that's been invested in cardiovascular disease has really inspired me as well. The field has made tremendous progress over the past 40 years, from the establishment of coronary care units to eventually the establishment of defibrillators and other technologies, and minimally invasive technologies such as percutaneous coronary intervention to be able to revascularize all these blocked arteries. It's truly groundbreaking. I mean, we no longer have to open people's chests to be able to help reperfuse their hearts, and the effect that has on outcomes, both in morbidity and mortality, is great. And just regarding the prevalence of cardiovascular disease, as you were alluding to, and as I often share, my grandfather actually was a cardiovascular patient, and he suffered from cardiovascular disease. And I remember vividly one day I was biking over to his house, and the door was open, and I was really surprised because I heard firemen coming from far, but wasn't sure where they were headed. And when I saw the door open, I saw him on the floor collapsed. And I saw my grandmother in all her states, and I was helpless. I was entirely helpless. I was 9 years old at the time. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. But fortunately, the firemen did arrive in time. They resuscitated him, and we got to spend many more years together. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. And so that feeling of helplessness and that feeling of wanting to make a direct and tangible impact in someone's life, it really propelled me towards cardiovascular medicine and cardiovascular surgery and research and innovation in general.
Wow, incredible stories and a great origin story, especially to think about that it started back in daycare. For the record, I'm sure if you track down my daycare teacher, she would confirm to all of you that I will be the next starting shortstop for the Montreal Expos, but different ambition, but we'll see how that turns out. Dr. Hanoush, maybe I'll just turn back to you. I mean, maybe for the benefit of our lay audience, myself included, can you describe for us what actually happens to us physiologically speaking when someone goes into cardiac arrest, and what role does CPR play in preventing serious harm or death?
Sure. I think that what Jeremy was referring to, that this pump of our entire body, our system functions on our heart beating so that blood is flowing constantly. You have to think of it in that respect, that our blood has to flow constantly so that the oxygen and everything that we need gets into the cells at all moments of every day for our entire life. And so when we talk about cardiac arrest, that means that it's a sudden, abrupt stop to that pump. The heart stops suddenly, blood flow stops through our entire body, and quite literally no cells in our body are getting all the vital nutrients and oxygen that they need on a millisecond basis, right? And the different parts of our body react differently to that. If you could understand that the most susceptible organ to damage quickly is unfortunately the brain. Being in the neurocritical care unit, I can attest to the fact that we need to act as rapidly as is humanly possible to prevent brain injury. And so now coming to that second part about what can we do, or what does cardiopulmonary resuscitation do, is that it's your heroic attempt at restarting that blood flow. Quite literally, you're replacing our own heart's ability to beat and circulate blood through our body by doing it quite mechanically with our hands and compressing on the chest. And it's been shown to actually have that effect of actually now moving blood through our body so that we can kind of get that blood flowing to where it needs to go, primarily the brain and the rest of the body. And that needs to be done immediately. And so I think that's what the focus is here, and what we're trying to empower everyone with. And the message is that there is no harm that you can do as a bystander by trying and attempting CPR. I think that's the first, and that's the constant message I've always given, is that people, and that's a human instinct, that's normal human nature to not want to harm your fellow. And so we think that by performing this CPR, you might be causing any pain or damage, and that is quite literally the opposite of the truth. It is what is going to save that human being by attempting CPR immediately on the spot. And I guess just to finish that thought, what we do in hospital, yes, technology is coming and innovation and research and everything that Jeremy is alluding to, but to be able to, perform the different therapies, administer the medications, put patients on this, or people on these specific types of resuscitative or life-sustaining measures or machines, we need to have a patient that comes alive to the hospital so that we can do that. And so while it is interesting and it is important and all the things that we may or can do in the hospital, what is being done between the moment that one of our fellow human beings collapses or has their cardiac arrest to the time that they get to the hospital is by every measure infinitely more important than what happens in the hospital. And so, and that's what's so powerful about this, is that that's not the case for every other disease, right? Someone gets diagnosed with cancer, you're going to come to the hospital, you're going to get your workup, you're going to see an oncologist and get your treatment. It happens in there. But this is flipping disease on its head. It's that we need to treat this disease immediately on the spot, and that's not me doing that. That's all of you. That's the general public that can actually, we throw the cliche saving lives around. This is it. This is it. This is saving lives.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Very powerfully and well said. Jeremy, let me flip it back to you then. What are some of the misunderstandings about CPR training, and the role that bystanders can play? I know Dr. Hanush alluded to the fact that people might feel intimidated to, interfere, I guess, or try to do something, especially if they have no medical training. So when you speak to people that are this is a bit of a foreign idea that you can save someone's lives, what do you hear back from people, and how do you switch their ideas around on that?
From my experience in working on this campaign for over 3 years and in leading our team, I think that a lot of the misconceptions have to do with individuals thinking that they could potentially do more harm than good. And the hard reality of the situation is that the person in front of you, for all intents and purposes, is dead until you resuscitate them. And so it's really important to understand that it can't get worse than the way it actually is. And so really anything is better than nothing. The goal of our campaign and the goal of everything we're doing is to make sure that anything that you will provide is at least driven on some basis of evidence and some basis of skill that will be able to optimize the outcome for your individual, your loved one, your friend, your coworker, your colleague. Because as Matt was mentioning, as great the breakthroughs and the innovations that we have in tertiary care once you make it to the hospital, fundamentally every second that person is not being resuscitated outside of the hospital and in the field is going to lead to more sequelae and more complications inside the hospital that are going to require more advanced technologies and be more difficult to manage and lead to worse outcomes. And so one of the major stigmas that we have around bystander resuscitation is A, that you could do more harm than good. B, that, for example, they may break a rib, or they may damage the chest wall, which again, in the context of an individual who is otherwise dead, is not concerning at all, because a broken rib is the easiest thing to take care of compared to everything else that may occur if an individual comes to the hospital and requires life support, right? And so those are two major things. Another stigma is that an individual may be defibrillated when they don't need it, and the technology that we have now in terms of automated external defibrillators available outside of the hospital is such that the technology will actually detect the rhythm and will advise whether a shock is recommended or not. And so these devices have become so advanced that they really offer you all the support you need to be able to not only resuscitate an individual from a defibrillation perspective, but in some cases guide your compressions, and they will actually provide you with a rhythm or a beat to compress to, while in addition having the support of 911 on the phone. And so I would say that those three are probably the most prevalent stigmas that we have around cardiac arrest. Another one would be that individuals think there's no way to come out of a cardiac arrest with a positive neurological outcome or neurologically intact. And I think that Samuel is living proof of that. And Katricia, who we have another video of and is a member of our steering committee and a cardiac arrest survivor, is also living proof of that. In fact, she founded a CPR organization called Living Proof Training. And so their stories are so important to hear. And I think one of the most effective experiences that I've had with the campaign is that fundamentally people react to emotions, people react to stories, and our life is a story in some sense. And so being able to tell that story throughout the campaign, being able to emotionally engage people, that's what's led to the most impactful approach to inspiring people with the willingness to act, and eventually engaging them in learning these bystander skills.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Samuel, did you ever have a chance to meet the bystanders that saved you, or do you have any sense of who they were? Were they just random people that happened to have CPR training?
So I virtually met, or actually just chatted with one of them online, who I was able to find. Actually, his name was on the police report, so I was able to track him down, and we chatted briefly. We agreed to meet, after the pandemic. That was in March of 2020, and still, hasn't happened yet. But the other person, I have no idea who it is. It's an anonymous person, really. So if that person's listening, I'm interested in meeting them for sure and thanking them. Their name is not on the police report, and I wasn't able to find them using social media. So, but so I don't know if that person. I was told that person is the one who started the chest compressions, but I don't know if that person had previous CPR training or anything like that.
Wow, interesting, wonderful story. Again, I mean, I guess they were, lucky for you, they happened to be in the right place for you at the right time.
Absolutely.
So again, if anyone is watching live and has questions for the panelists, you can send them to us by email at aoc@mcgill.ca. We did receive a couple of questions that have come in, and actually, maybe I'll turn the first to you, Dr. Hanush. In fact, we got sort of a question that came in before we went live. I think it came in yesterday, and then one that's come in while we're on the air, about the difference between CR versus CPR. So the initial question came in from Jeff Budd, who said that he read in a book by Sanjay Gupta called Cheating Death that CR exclusively rather than CPR. So in other words, chest compressions only, no pulmonary breaths, showed an increase in the chance of survival and less brain damage. And a follow-up question has come in now from Caroline Poitvin, who's also asking about the rates of success between CR versus CPR. So is that something maybe you can address for us from a clinical perspective?
Sure. I think what they're referring to, those two questions are something that's come up quite recently in terms of what's called exactly as you're suggesting, hands-only CPR, chest compression-only CPR. So basically just focusing all your attention on performing good, high-quality chest compressions and not straying from that towards providing assistance or breaths. That became of even more significance or importance during the pandemic, when we recognized early on that there was going to be obviously a significant reticence from the general public, understandably, towards doing this in the context of the pandemic. And so they're right. Those two questions are correct. I think in the sense that if we can, as a group, encourage and enhance everyone's attempt at performing basic life-sustaining measures, such as chest compression, hands-only CPR, chest compressions only, then anything that you will do at the patient or the person's side when they've collapsed will only lead to better outcomes. So the key to remember is coming back to that first question you asked me, Derek, about what happens when you have cardiac arrest. And I think it's all predicated on that. It's that when there's a lack of blood flow, circulation stops, and cells start to die, that damage can become irreversible quite quickly. And so if we are able to restart the circulation, this flow. The next most important thing is to have it going continuously or constantly. And so chest compression CPR will do that. Is what's most important in the whole process, is to have someone performing these compressions continuously so that you have blood flowing continuously to all the organs, especially the brain. So yeah,
I'll just add to Matt's point there, that as excellent as chest compressions are, we know based on evidence that the most impactful thing you can do for someone suffering from a cardiac arrest with a shockable rhythm is defibrillation, because ultimately that will allow for the independent return of spontaneous circulation, right? So for the individual to be perfusing themselves on their own, which is certainly better than any compressions that we can offer. And so calling 911 immediately when someone collapses and initiating that chain of survival, so that you start CPR and someone else goes to get a defibrillator, or at least the ambulance or the fireman or the policeman are on their way with a defibrillator, is ultimately what's going to lead to the most impactful approach, because that is where you're going to be able to reestablish circulation spontaneously, and that is what's going to offer patients their best fighting chance at optimizing their outcomes and ensuring that reperfusion of flow, which Matt was referring to, throughout the body in a very sustainable and spontaneous fashion.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great point, Jeremy. And I think that just to complement that, he's right in suggesting that I appreciate what he said before about the AED, is that it's such a reassuring and highly technological device that now it's going to be directing you. It's going to be reassuring you and telling you what to do. So to have that at your side will only empower you even more to do what's necessary, because it's kind of guiding you through the whole process.
Wow. Well, thank you both for taking the time to address those questions that have come in. Again, if anyone is watching live and has questions for the panel, aoc@mcgill.ca. Do we have any sense as to what percentage of the general population is adequately trained in CPR? And are those numbers any higher or lower than they may have been in previous generations? Dr. Hanoush, yeah. Jeremy, go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I can try and address that. Unfortunately, I don't believe we have good quality data on what percentage of the public or what proportion of the public is highly trained. But I do believe that we know that there is an increase in the amount of individuals that are trained that's disproportional from the increase in the population. So that's to say that statistically speaking, there's a greater prevalence of individuals in the public who are bystander CPR trained. And I think that a few things can be attributed to that. I think that the increase in first of all, evidence-based pre-hospital resuscitation measures, like implementing chains of survival with hands-only CPR that Matt was explaining so well, are to be thanked for this, because now all of a sudden there's a technique that can be learned, that can be taught in the context of a course where certification can be received, and many jobs and many employment opportunities are in fact requiring for certain individuals in the workplace to have this training. And I believe that even at the provincial and if not federal level, there's a requirement within the workplace for at least one individual to be trained in basic life support and to have a defibrillator on site. And I think that public policy and public health are to owe also for this increase in individuals who are trained. But the most impactful thing we know is efforts like our campaign to be able to sensitize the public, because as much as you can have a trained individual, as much as you can have these requirements and regulations in place and public policies, ultimately people need to be inspired with the willingness to act. People need to have an emotional attachment to the cause, and people need to be able to see Samuel and Katricia on the other side, and they need to realize that their efforts and their actions can lead to that. And so we know that public health efforts like the ones that we're running with the campaign are extremely successful, and there's been studies in Denmark, I believe, and in Sweden, which have shown that these public health campaigns can have a very, very big impact. In fact, we presented our results from the 2020 World Restart Heart campaign at the European Society for Cardiology, and I presented as an emerging investigator on behalf of our group, and the interest that we got from the cardiovascular community was tremendous. In the context of the public health campaign and the scale of our campaign, it's certainly one of the largest in Canada, if not the world.
Wow, interesting. So Jeremy, let me ask you this. Has it become more difficult during the pandemic to get people to pay attention to your message? And I know this is your second year, heavily involved in the campaign. Has this year become a little bit easier in the sense that at least there's, activity on campus? People are actually going to classes and showing up downtown on campus?
Right. So the first year of the campaign was 3 years ago. I was one of the co-leads of the campaign at the time, and the effort was really focused on the McGill campus. So the effort was focused on going to several amphitheaters that we had exposure to, and essentially getting a group of students, rallying a group of faculty members, including Matt and Farhan Banji, who's a critical care physician at the Children's Hospital. That's been an amazing support of our campaign and is our steering committee chair, and also the director of education at the Sim Center. And essentially setting up a booth on campus to be able to teach people CPR and give them feedback on their approach. And so that was amazing. I think we had reached about 3,000 people at the time. And in doing so, we were able to sensitize members of our McGill community and our campus here at home about the importance of bystander resuscitation. And then, of course, as I began planning for the 2020 campaign, the pandemic struck in March of 2020. And so I had to pivot entirely. And that's when we built a team and decided that we're going to run this campaign digitally for the first time ever. And that was probably one of the highlights of the several conference presentations that we've taken this campaign to. It's that this was an entirely digital campaign, which taught a very physical intervention to members of the public, which is very hard. You have lots of smoking cessation public health efforts or vaccination public health efforts where you're trying to sensitize people to take ownership of their own health. But to take ownership of your own health in a way where you need to perform something that's very physical on a loved one is very difficult to transmit digitally. So we had to get extremely creative, and that's where we came up with, not only focusing on the McGill community, but taking this globally, since the message truly is universal, and taking all of the content that we've built locally and scaling it in a way that it can be shared globally. And our reach was incredible. Last year, we reached over 500,000 people. So we took this campaign from a 3,000 person thing on campus to having reached over 500,000 people across the world, while still maintaining that focus on our McGill community. And so chairing this campaign this year, we have the privilege now of actually doing a hybrid. So doing both, keeping the social media campaign live with our ambassadors online, but then also having that in-person component and that engagement from our affiliated hospitals. As we speak, there's an education booth taking place at the Jewish General Hospital. And on Friday, there will be on campus at McGill at the WRAH Gates and in the McIntyre Medical Building, as well as all the activities and collaborations with the McGill University Health Center's Patient Education Office and McGill University's Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences and the Steinberg Center for Simulation.
Wow, wonderful. So it sounds like you guys are just keep growing and growing year to year, regardless what the world throws at you guys. Wonderful.
Nothing's stopping us.
Dr. Hanoush, I'm curious, for patients who do receive or are lucky enough, like Samuel, to receive, a quick response, medical response, and get to a hospital, what is the sort of the long-term prognosis for survivors of cardiac arrest?
Yeah, I think that Jeremy was referring to that before too, about how we can we keep talking about outcomes, about how we can improve their outcomes. And obviously, Samuel is living proof of what we would consider to be the best possible one, obviously today, having this conversation with him. So how do we evaluate that? It can be quite complex. It can be quite difficult, actually, in hospital to understand how patients will evolve during their hospital admission. But it all comes back to what I was referring to before about how fast we can restore circulation with timely CPR and defibrillation via the automatic external defibrillator, how fast patients can get to the hospital and get good tertiary high quality care. And then begins a slower process where we take it day by day and reevaluate what small changes we can make in therapy to give the brain the time that it needs to heal and the body the time it needs to recuperate overall. And so it really runs the gamut of patients that come in and unfortunately, progress and unfortunately still do die, but it can go as well as this remarkable outcome that we're all witnessing today. And so that's what inspires us, what drives us, and that's what we all strive for. And those outcomes of patients suffering a sudden cardiac arrest, having return of their circulation, and making it to the hospital, surviving their hospital, and leaving the hospital and having a good quality of life are only improving. They're only getting better, and that's what's so exciting about where we are right now. Really at the crux of this, you know?
Yeah, wonderful. Now, what about you, Samuel? How has your recovery gone, and how are you doing today? I mean, you're working, you're studying for your master's degree at McGill. I guess things are looking up for you. So, can you tell us a little bit about your own personal recovery?
Sure, yeah. So, well, first, right after the accident, I was fitted with an ICD, an implanted defibrillator. So that's one thing that was done to sort of try to help my long-term prognosis, if you will, because this is something I was told by my doctors, and that this is something I have to learn to live with. You know, it's not going away. It's not like I can heal. Well, right now at least, we don't think I can heal from this. So I have to learn to live with this. Pretty much try to focus on the fact that I'm still here, and happy about that. So that's what I choose to focus on, and I'm doing quite well. I'm not running anymore. I've given up running. I go for walks instead. Sure, nice too. And I'm working. I submitted my master's, my initial thesis recently, so everything's going according to plan in terms of my academic life. So I'm doing quite well and slowly learning to live with this.
Wow. So no plans to apply to medical school after all this, right?
Not for now, no. Who knows, maybe one day.
Well, I think you'll serve us and society well, I think, in your engineering career as well, especially with your
Hopefully.
McGill education behind you. So we did get, we're sort of, I guess, running up close to the top of the hour. We did get actually one question that came in, is from, which sort of ties into something I was going to ask you about, which this came in from Vincent Seguin, who's an instructor at the Heart and Stroke Foundation, who was asking how he can help get involved and spread the word. So maybe I'll sort of turn to you, Jeremy, because I was going to ask as well, you know, what advice would you have for people that are either watching us now or happen to run into any of your activities? How could people get involved? What would what would be the outcome you would like to see for people that are touched by these stories and by this movement?
So stories like those are so inspiring to us, because that makes us realize the reach that we're having and the impact that we're having on the public. In fact, Samuel reached out to me after having heard about the campaign, and that's how we learned of Samuel's story, and we're able to bring him into this event. And so bringing our community together to focus in on such an important cause is really inspiring. And so I want to thank you, Vincent, for your interest and for taking the time to reach out. And I think that the best answer that I can give to that is to stay engaged and to stay involved with the campaign. I think that we're doing lots of work to be able to kind of break down this knowledge into the essential steps to be able to inspire the public. And I think that as an instructor at the Heart and Stroke Foundation, you're doing even more to be able to certify people and teach them within a more structured approach the best impact that they can have. And I think that that's the most inspiring thing, right? It's to see people start off by being interested in bystander resuscitation, and then eventually wanting to take it to the next level and going for formal training and going for a basic life support course and certification. So I would say continue doing what you're doing, and continue offering your services as an instructor to the public. And allowing them to be able to reach you in a way that's accessible and feasible, so that they can get training for themselves and their loved ones, and hopefully increase the number of people around us that are bystander resuscitation enabled. In terms of any other members of the public who are interested in getting involved with the campaign, you can visit us at www.mcgill.ca/WRAH, and on our social media platforms. Most of our handles are McGill WRAH. On Twitter, Facebook, and on Instagram. And our communications team there is monitoring all chatter and will be available to answer any questions, to help you stay engaged, to learn more about your story and about your interests in cardiac arrest, and see how we can collaborate together to make an impact.
Okay, wonderful. And after we go off the air, perhaps I'll put you, Jeremy, in touch with Vincent directly, so you guys could build that connection as well. So before we close, maybe I'll just sort of turn to each of our panelists for some parting words. I know you guys conveyed a lot of great information. I think really built the case for why this is so important, why bystander CPR is so important. Dr. Hanush, any final words you'd want to sort of, impart to the viewers today about why they should pay attention and get involved?
I would start by thanking them. I think that just the fact that they participated, that they watched this is already so significant, and it means a lot to all of us. And I want to thank Jeremy and the students for all the incredible work they have done in organizing all of this, and Samuel for having just the incredible presence and vulnerability to share this story with all of us. So my words would be to act and in the best of your capacities, and feel like you want to do something for your fellow human, because anything, as Jeremy was referring to earlier in the broadcast, is better than nothing, and you'll feel like you will have helped and possibly change the outcome or change the course of that person's life, and that's as significant as we can be in this world. So that's what I would say.
Right. Samuel, I guess you are literally living proof of this message getting through. Any final message you'd want to convey to people, leave with people watching?
Well, Dr. Hanush said it so well. I think the main takeaway from my story is that bystanders do have the power to do something. So I would say, I would hope that my story serves as an example for the people watching who obviously care a lot about this, or at least enough to tune in today. And I would say, go and if you're not familiar with these, with chest compressions and things like that, go and check out the wonderful resources that World Restart Heart McGill has online, and get involved if you want, and help, spread the word.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And Jeremy, I guess I'll leave the final words to you. I'm sure you'll find a good way to wrap this up for us.
Thanks, Derek. I too want to echo Matt and Samuel's words, and first of all, expressing what a privilege it's been to work with our inspiring team that keeps on growing at over 50 members, including our student committee, our volunteers, our steering committee. The bicentennial edition of McGill's University's World Restart Heart 2021 campaign, which actually couples with the McGill's 200th anniversary, is a wonderful testament to the impact that we can have together as a community, and that we as a university can have on the public. It's not an independent institution that's distinct from society. On the contrary, McGill University is here to serve the public. It's McGill the good, McGill the great, as Principal Fortier sometimes says. And I think that, and that's the story of McGill, right? It's that we're here to do good, and we're here to help the public, and we're here to not create barriers, but to break barriers, and to take all of this information and to take all of the care that we're providing in our hospitals and bring it out to members of the public, to be able to look after you and your loved ones, and to look after each other fundamentally. And so the efforts from our campaign have really made unbelievable strides in preventing these fatal outcomes from devastating families in our very own community and around the world. And on behalf of all those who are going to one day benefit from this life-saving knowledge, I want to thank everyone who's interested, who's engaged, who's been so dedicated, who's been so passionate, who's been so supportive. It motivates me, it motivates everyone on this call, and we're extremely grateful. And so we hope that together we can make a difference. We know that together we will make a difference, and thank you.
Wow, great, wonderful. And I know I'm definitely very motivated by listening to all of your stories and insight and personal narratives today. It's been really, really a pleasure to have all of you with us, and to be able to share your message with the wider community today. Before we close, I would like to remind everyone that this video will be available at this very same link soon after our recording ends. So feel free to share it with others who may not have been able to tune in live, as I know I will on my end for sure. And of course, a big thank you to our three guests today, Dr. Matthew Hanush, Jeremy Levitt, and Samuel Lortie, for joining us and sharing their personal stories and insight on such an important topic. The McGill chapter of World Restart Heart has many more activities planned for the coming days, as Jeremy has told us. If you would like any more information, please visit their website, mcgill.ca/WRAH. And thank you to everyone at home and around the world for joining us today. Please stay tuned to your McGill email and social media feeds for more updates on exciting virtual programming, including webcasts like this one, as McGill continues to celebrate its bicentennial anniversary. Until then, please be safe, everyone, and be well. Thank you.